Yo, Mason Pot fam, it's your bro Jack here, and we're talking about the 5 most common infusion mistakes I see. Number one, I think, is just overcomplicating the process and not trusting the process. It's so simple. I remember my first couple infusions, I was like, is this gonna work? I'm putting this bud in the oven, then I put it in oil for a couple hours. What's the right timing? I was all weird about figuring out the right timing, did so much research. And it seems a little daunting, but at the end of the day, it's really important to remember that it is simple, guys. Infusion is just adding heat to the flour to decarb it, adding that decarb flour to an oil or butter of your choice, and infusing it for a couple hours, then straining it. It's really that simple. Trust the process. Don't get overwhelmed because it is really simple. That brings me on to decarbing. Decarbing, aka activation, is how you turn that bud into the most potent thing possible for your infusions and edibles. So inherently, that bud is going to have THCA in there. When you add heat to it, it's going to convert that THCA to THC, the psychoactive component of cannabis that everybody's or most people are typically looking for to get that nice stony high from. Now, when I say that, I should note that you don't necessarily have to decarb. Some people do a passive infusion where they don't activate it. I decarb probably 98, 99% of the time. The only reason that you might not want to decarb is to save some of those terpenes that could possibly be degraded during the decarboxylation process. Now with that, all decarbing is not created equal. When I first started, I would just throw it on a tray in the oven, just in the open. Then I started doing it in a jar. Then I would use other infusers. But the beauty too of just a little plug here, guys. I'll plug the Mason pot here, is you put your flour in here and it has this digital thermometer with a probe here, so you know exactly the temperature of your bud inside of the jar when it's decarbing. We recommend 240 degrees for 40 minutes, and we have a couple different styles you can do. You could leave this on, you could do a residual heat method. Way more decarb videos below and on the Mason Pot and True Buds TV channel, guys. Number 3, I would say, is ratios. So a lot of people, most people that watch my True Bud stuff, I would say there's a fair amount that like low dose stuff too though, but most people want a super potent infusion, right? And I find when people ask that sometimes, I'm like, how much, say you're using 7 grams of flour. I'm like, how much oil or butter are you adding to that? And they'll be like 2 cups or 3 cups or whatever it may be. I'm like, that's why it's not potent. If you want to get the most potent batch possible, my recommendation is, if you're using an infuser, any method, let's say you're using this mason jar here. You fill your flour up to here. Then you add your oil, butter, whatever it may be, until it barely tops the flour. You need to make sure the flour is completely topped. And then you're going to get the most potent infusion possible because there's not so much extra oil there. That being said too, if you could go make it super potent, and if you do want to make it less potent, you can water it down at the end. You could do half regular olive oil and half infused olive oil is a good way to go about it. But I've just noticed people wanting potent shit, and the ratio is a little off, guys. And again, if you want something that's not potent, then just put as much oil as you want. But if you really want to get that potency, I highly recommend doing what I just mentioned here, guys. Under or over infusing. This is very common, I think. I've done it in the past myself, but in my opinion, after infusing for so long, I think there's a point of diminishing return in terms of like how long you go. I've done infusions for 8 to 12 hours, which in my opinion now is just unnecessary. The typical mark we like to do at Mason Pot is about 2 to 4 hours for the infusion process. And that's really gonna get you where you need to be. You could even go less sometimes. I usually do about 2 hours in general, but if I'm doing a bigger batch, if this jar was full, I might go 3 to 4 hours. And then too, the cool thing about this is when you take it out, that it will keep, this maintains heat so well that it will keep kind of infusing in there for a while for you guys too. And the under, I mean, I would rather personally probably go over than under the time limit, because if you go over, maybe you'll degrade your infusion a little bit. Maybe it will have a bit of a charred taste. Maybe a little bit of the terpenes or cannabinoids burn off. But if you under infuse, then that THC and other cannabinoids will just not be as readily available. So I would err on the side of going a little longer than a little shorter. I've never infused really any time under 2 hours. I've done like an hour and a half maybe. I've never done an hour. People do, you can. Again, I like that 2 hour mark in general, but 2 to 4, depending on the batch size, I think is a good way to go about it. And that one probably could have been bumped up to a higher number there. These are in no particular order, as you guys could see. And number 5, I would say, is the Infusion Medium. Firstly, what do you like? That's my whole thing with infusing. Do you? That's the beauty of infusing. The world is your oyster. You can make exactly what you want and have full control. But when it comes to certain mediums, I'm going to use butter right now because I think this is important, using the best butter possible for bioavailability. There's often times when I'm just kind of too lazy to clarify butter if I just have my Kerrygold, which I usually have on hand. But you can go buy ghee butter, which is a clarified butter. And what that's going to do is it's going to just allow for better bioavailability and a better absorption of the bud there. Essentially what's happening with clarified butter is you're getting rid of the milk fats and you're just going to be left with more of those saturated fats ready to pick up those cannabinoids in your infusion. So when using butter, I recommend using a ghee or clarified butter for the best possible absorption and just the best product in general. Now, while I'm on this topic, guys, when you're looking for an olive oil, I recommend doing an unrefined, organic, virgin coconut oil, cold pressed. Cold pressed means it's just going to be pressed right out with no heat. If it doesn't say cold pressed on there, there's a good chance it's not cold pressed because cold press is usually more expensive and an extra process. So if you see something that says virgin, organic, unrefined coconut oil, but it doesn't say cold press, there's a very likely chance that it is expeller press, which involves some heat. But some people like this too because coconut can be hard on some bellies, and the unrefined cold press does have more of the full plant there, which is what I'm always going for. But if you do go for the refined, it will have less of a coconut oil taste. And most MCT oils that you're going to buy are going to be refined, and I really do enjoy a nice MCT oil tincture. Olive oils have been creeping up on me for my infusions. The health aspect of olive oil is insane. I enjoy it just for that reason personally, and I like the taste of olive oil in a lot of my foods. And if you're looking for a good olive oil, of course you can go online, buy some super premium stuff, but if you're in a store in general, I like to look for a single source olive oil that you know is coming from one region. So you're just getting a little more consistency there. A lot of these like Bertolli or kind of the lower end brands will source from like 6, 7, 8 different regions. It's still an olive oil, it'll still work, it'll still absorb your infusion. I'm just all about kind of trying to bring it down to that single region and dial it in. And you can get really geeked out here too on like, if you bought like depending on the strain you have, and just having a single region olive oil can be a nice way to go about it. I already mentioned butter, and you can do any fat too, guys. You could do bacon fat, duck fat, schmaltz. I have a video on all the different infusions, and there's so many you can do. Get creative. These are some of the main kind of mistakes or just tips, I guess, that I wanted to share with you guys today in regards to infusing. These were my top 5 I thought of. Do you have anything else? And I hope this video found you guys well. Thank you for posting up with the Mason Pot fam. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe, share this channel. We're all about building the community, putting a good word of infusing and the cannabis out there, guys. Thanks again for posting up. Oh yeah, and you can infuse any other herbs that you want with the Mason Pot kit. It doesn't have to be cannabis. And this brings me to another subject that I get asked often. And I thought I was gonna stop the video, but I'm going, baby, I'm going. You can infuse hemp, you can infuse CBD flower, THCA flower. Remember I said earlier, THCA turns to THC. You can infuse concentrates. That's how you can get a super potent batch too. You can do a gram of concentrate with very minimal infusion. I did like a vegan butter recipe where I did like a gram of concentrate and 2 tablespoons of butter. That shit was so potent and nice, guys. But see, I'm going on. I'll catch you guys on the next video. Thanks again for chilling.